They told me I'd never be able to eat out again. I'd never be able to travel. I'd have no life. I said, screw 'em. I'm not taking their experimental gene therapy shot. I'll wait and see what happens. And if they want to mess with me, they can come along and try it. I'll go down fighting. Friends and colleagues said to me, I don't want to take it either, man, but I just want to start doing fun stuff again. I said, if you don't want to take it, then don't take it. They can't make you. Then the obedient and credulous within earshot replied, actually, they can make you take it. Well, here I am, folks, a year later and still unjabbed. And wouldn't you know it, they've quietly dropped all the mandates. I'm currently living in one of the Western world's preeminent cities, and also one of the most locked down and vax mandated. Until recently it was illegal to enter any business other than grocery, retail and medical, unless you'd had the jab, which meant things like restaurants, bars, hairdressers, gyms and cinemas were off limits. The unvaxxed were also banned from air travel, and most notably from attending the workplace. All this despite the long-established fact that the vaccine does not prevent transmission of the virus. This basic point of epidemiology was of no interest to our rulers, because, as we are all now well aware, the mandates were never about public health, but about control and compliance. I do not expect that we have seen the end of the vaccine mandates and crazy authoritarian overreach from our governments. Indeed, I expect the next crisis to usher in even more draconian edicts. Yet I sensed, when the COVID vaccines were first mandated, that this policy would eventually be rolled back, and also that many businesses would not enforce it. My reasons for believing this were, 1. It quickly became clear that the efficacy was very low, perhaps even non-existent, and such a farce could not long be maintained, even with the blatant blanket propaganda from the craven mainstream media. 2. There would be enough resistance and refusal to hamper the proper functioning of society, and this would present governments with the impossible prospect of force vaccinating people. 3. This type of hysteria works well in short bursts, but over time people get apathetic, and even the hardcore vaccine enthusiasts would eventually get blasé about boosters. I was right on all 3 counts, and over the past few months the authorities where I live have quietly been rolling back the various mandates. First they reinstated hairdressers and pubs, then they added cinemas and a bunch of other businesses, then they dropped the quarantine requirements for travellers, and finally the last of the mandates was abandoned, the workplace. It's telling that this was the last one to go. The workplace vax mandate was obviously the trump card that they hoped would push as many anti-vaxxers as possible over the line. For again, the core objective in all this was compliance, the breaking of people's wills. And indeed many folks were coerced in this manner. Those who could not work from home, or who were employed by companies eager to fillet the state government by mandating employees be jabbed regardless, were faced with the stark choice between standing on principle and keeping their jobs, and most opted for the latter. I don't blame these people, and I'm not even sure what I would have done had I been put in the same position. Fortunately for me, my job can be done from home, and my employer took the humane and correct decision to leave vaccination as optional, so I was never faced with this horrific conundrum. I have nothing but the greatest admiration and respect for the many thousands who opted to stand on principle and accept unemployment over dishonour. To me, these people are revolutionary heroes of the First Order, and I met and marched with many of them during the momentous protests of last summer. But there are those whom I do not respect, and whose servile compliance at the first hint of government intimidation sticks in my memory as the most contemptible example of mass human frailty I've ever witnessed. Those who were not at risk of losing their jobs, and who did not want to take the vaccine, but who went ahead and did it anyway because they wanted to start doing fun stuff again, this sizable block of the populace will forever stand in disgrace to me. I don't say this lightly, as a number of my friends fall into this category, including a very close one. I still love this guy and would defend him against all slights, but I also cannot reconcile my judgment of this aspect of his personality. I remember clearly him saying to me over and over, "I just want to start doing fun stuff again." And when I recall these words, I feel a contemptuous fury. I have not shared my feelings with this friend, nor do I plan to. It's better that we maintain our bond because the things that we do have in common are wonderful and worth preserving. But if he ever asked me straight up, I would tell him, "Dude, I think the decision you made was weak. It was the craven action of a shallow, unprincipled consumer. I still love you, man, and no one is beyond redemption and growth, but I think you made a really bad call on that one. The kind of call that makes me think I wouldn't want to be in a foxhole with you." For what did these people get for their compliance? A few months' unfettered access to hairdressers, pubs and movie theatres, and perhaps an overseas holiday. That's it. Was it worth it? I can't imagine the scorn I would have for myself having rolled over on this issue, only to discover 9 months down the track that I could have just waited it out. And what makes it even worse is the mandates themselves had no teeth from the start. Most businesses didn't enforce them. Another prediction on which I was correct. And the ones that did enforce them were so apathetic about it that a simple screenshot of a friend's Vax pass was enough to get one through the door in most places. After a brief period of caution, I myself flagrantly flashed my fake vaccine passport at restaurants, bars and various other amenities with no repercussions at all, until, after only a short while, most places stopped checking altogether. The government did not have the resources nor the will to enforce its outrageous edicts, and more importantly, the public had no stomach for it. Police officers tend towards authoritarianism and can generally be relied upon to do the bidding of snivelling fascist bureaucrats. But your average waitress or barista? Yeah, good luck turning them into Gestapo agents. All this was obvious to me from the beginning, but even if it hadn't been, I wouldn't have submitted. Overpriced Eggs Benedict and shitty service? I can live without that. Crappy woke films? No thanks. $12 pints of beer and piss-weak G&Ts? Hell, I don't even really drink anymore, so you can shove your pubs and bars up your ass too. I can even live without swanky overseas holidays, believe it or not. This was a funny one, and certainly the most common refrain from those who felt coerced into getting jabbed. I don't really want to get vaxxed, but I really want to travel again. It goes to the heart of what is wrong with these folk. This gigantic sense of entitlement. It was only a couple of generations ago that the average person never took overseas holidays at all. What I've learnt about this segment of the population, which we can loosely categorise as middle-class urban professionals, is that fun stuff is infinitely more important to them than any sense of morality or personal pride. And this revelation bodes poorly for the middle class, for it is against us that the brunt of the globalist assault is currently being directed. The proponents of the Great Reset know that they must wipe out the middle class to install their new world order, for this demographic represents the last vestige of upward mobility and the ideals of liberty and personal property that this entails. A future where we will own nothing and be happy is contingent upon the abolishment of the middle class. Once this is achieved, the working class can be roundly abused and eventually enslaved. And this is why I have such contempt for this attitude in those colleagues and contemporaries of mine who did not want the jab and had the option to stand strong and say no, but opted for the path of least resistance because they wanted to start doing fun stuff again. They do not realise what their acquiescence represents, that it signals to our rulers that the subjugation of the troublesome middle class, with all their outdated ideas about home ownership and financial freedom, is now within reach, that we are prepped and conditioned for the next big power grab, and that when they come for the rest of our freedoms, Most will go along with it again because they just want to be able to do fun stuff. Fun stuff! As I said, the phrase infuriates me. What are you, 6 years old? I sacrifice the fun stuff for my principles. I do not say this to gloat. I say it because principles matter. Without them, we are no different than spoiled children. Nor do I claim that my resistance and current vindication represents an ultimate victory. I fully expect a resumption of restrictions and mandates at some not too far off point. And perhaps this time I will not be so fortunate. But this is not the point. The point is that these abuses are only able to be perpetuated through the exploitation of people's addiction to fun stuff. Our society is a crack whore, and the government is our pimp, threatening to withhold our next hit unless we get on the bed and spread our legs. Well, to hell with all that. You can take my fun stuff, but you'll not take my pride, my honour, and my soul. We have time ahead of the next crisis to talk to these people in our lives and ask them whether a few months of fun stuff was worth the moral defeat they imposed on themselves, and whether they might be willing to view things differently next time, having now seen that they did not actually need to do what they were told, that if they'd just had a little more spine, they could have had their pride and their fun stuff. I don't plan to tell my friend exactly what I think of him, but I reckon I'll have this conversation with him at some point. I encourage you to do the same, if you have the opportunity. Thanks for listening. Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. Please also subscribe to my Substack at jjdawson.substack.com. And if you'd like to keep in touch, please do follow me on Twitter at RealJJDawson. You can also follow me on Getter, Gab, and Minds. And of course, if you enjoyed this, please do give it a like and share it about, because it really helps me out.